Welcome to Prime Suspects. Alongside Adam Bjorn and Prime Sports co-founder Joe Brennan Jr., I'm your host, Matt Landis. Today's topics: a rematch for the Stanley Cup Final and a reduction in NBA handle, a deep dive on the unfolding tax situation in Illinois, and the latest in prediction markets. Adam, we'll start with you and the puck dropping tomorrow on an NHL Final rematch between the Florida Panthers and Edmonton Oilers. How's the playoff action been so far? And where does the Florida-Edmonton rooting interest lie across Prime and BetCris?
Right now, it's still been pretty light, I guess. When's the first game's tomorrow or the next day? Tomorrow, you just said. Yeah.
Tomorrow, yeah.
I'll catch up. Don't worry about it. Yeah, I mean, I was looking at it last night, and it was like 75% of the money was on Edmonton, but I think about 60% was on the Panthers for the series. So looked like, we're going to need the Panthers. At this point, series, futures, all those kind of things, they become irrelevant, I think, sometimes when you do game by game, getting into that depth. That's why I think futures in the right place, in the right state, and that are a great tool to sort of market and really get aggressive on to sort of push it. Unfortunately, Ohio is not one of those because you got to pay it as the bet comes through the front door. But this is a spot where right now it's looking like we need the Panthers. Even if you asked me who won last year, I couldn't think of it off the top of my head right now.
It was the Panthers.
But, I mean, through the playoffs so far, it's actually, been decent action. Obviously, it's up against the NBA, which it's the clear fifth or sixth sport, whatever it is in the US these days. It's well behind the colleges, even the NHL, I think, these days on big games. So, right now, needing the Panthers, hopefully a bit more action comes in for tomorrow's game one.
And we've also got the NBA Finals matchup set, the Indiana Pacers taking on the Oklahoma City Thunder, that one tipping off on Thursday. We've seen some new data from Eilers and Krejcik Gaming indicating NBA handle has dipped 10% year over year. Adam, wondering how this aligns with what you're seeing at Prime and BetCris.
So I haven't looked at the year over year. I actually thought we were getting really good volume these series. I thought they were well matched up series. I thought you had teams that generally don't get this deep into the playoffs. One thing I am curious is what the Knicks number would have been against the Thunder in the finals, because, I mean, the Pacers, the spread number and that just seems high, but West versus East, it's always been a fairly deep disparity. The series betting's been all Thunder one way to this point as well. But as for the decline, it's NBA. I think a lot of people have started to sort of get drawn out by the length of the season. The game is very different now. It's very up and down the court. I think it's lost a lot of spectator interest. I don't know what crowds and participation and viewership, I presume that's taken a dive a bit as well. The way that obviously there's other ways to bet it these days. The money going into sweeps isn't being recorded. The money going into prediction marks isn't being recorded on these levels either. I think it's just a natural attrition rate. And then there's the parlays and same game parlays and all these other things. I don't know how states exactly break out some of this stuff. So when you've got an NBA, an NHL parlay, what does that get recorded in a lot of these states? Is it a cross-sport parlay? And again, all the reporting's different. So I'd take it with a grain of salt, as in the drop. But as expected, there's a lot more stuff to bet in. There's a lot of unregulated places now in the America's own backyard that's not getting recorded. And I think that's just a natural progress of where the NBA's at overall.
Yeah, when you look at both these sports, their respective finals, the league offices in New York for both the NHL and the NBA must be they won't say so out loud, but they got to be disappointed when, if you look at the four remaining teams, the glamour franchise, if you go by championships, is Edmonton, which I don't even think cracks the top 80 as far as media market size in North America. You look at the NBA final, you have Indiana, which is the number 25 media market, versus Oklahoma City, which is the number 80 or number 67 media market or something like that. So you're not going to get the casual interest in these that you normally would if you had like a Lakers or a Celtics or somebody like that in there. You look at the NHL final, Miami's a cool town. It's not a particularly good sports town as far as, of course, everybody there is now a lifelong Panthers fan, but that's been a fairly moribund franchise for a long time. About the only thing you can say is, like, you have all of Canada right now lining up behind Edmonton. But if all of Canada lines up behind Edmonton and you're seeing like really low volume numbers, what does that say about our 51st state?
And a quick fact check, Joe, if my real-time research is...
Yeah, I heard you typing away. It's 47.
So nothing to write home about, but maybe a bit more prominent than you had given credence to a moment ago. And if we look at this a bit more broadly than the NHL and NBA finals matchups, thinking about that Eilers and Krejcik NBA handle report, Joe, what would you say you see as the most valid reasons for the decline if we are to take these numbers at face value, despite some of Adam's skepticism? And with that in mind, how do you see this trend playing out perhaps next season and beyond?
Well, I guess you could say that the decline in handle is due to the overwhelming success of the, main recreational sports books and pushing their players into parlays away from single bets. And, their revenue is up, their handle is down. If you're in this business to make money, I guess the fact that their revenue is up and over says, hey, this is analytic success. So it'll be interesting to see if that, trend continues where you see that split with handle continuing to decline and revenue continuing to go up. That's probably the main reason. And then also, yes, if promos are factored out, since most states aren't allowing you now to discount out promotional dollars, the fake money coming out of the pool also affects the handle, obviously.
From some cooling sentiment on betting on basketball to the searing situation in Illinois, where a new tax has been introduced that would bring the Prairie State's effective tax rate close to New York's nation-leading 51%. Joe, we're seeing lots of critical takes on this, including from you, suggesting states will lose betting revenue to prediction markets to avoid prohibitive taxes. How realistic is it that Illinois walks this back in response to the outpouring of criticism? And conversely, how likely is it that this sets a precedent that encourages other states to explore similar moves?
So I don't see Illinois backpedaling on this one at all. The way that they did it was pretty stealthy. I was in Chicago since last Thursday. So I was there, didn't hear a word about this. And I guess maybe it was a good thing because maybe I would have hopped in a car and headed down to Springfield, because this is going to have, I think, an unintended consequence for the state of Illinois. We've been talking now for how long that states are reading the room wrong. And that they're indulging in some very lazy budgeting and some very lazy lawmaking here right now. Illinois is about the biggest example of bad faith when it comes to regulating this industry. This is, between the incredibly high fees that they already charge up front for operators to go live in their state to, now they went from 15 to a top rate of 40% of gross revenue. And now just a year later, now we have fixed taxes, fixed fees, and they escalate rather than decline. So they go from 25 cents and leap up to 50 cents. It's just incredibly bad faith. I get it. State lawmakers right now are challenged to be able to fill the gap in money that they're not going to be seeing coming back from the federal government. They have a lot of programs. Their commitments are not getting any smaller. But to just say like, hey, we've got this new industry that's happened like within the last 6 years. Let's just squeeze the hell out of it for every dime. And let's do it in the middle of the night so they don't have a half decent chance of being able to lobby against it, is just terrible. And then, I didn't come out as hard as I really wanted to because I was in Chicago and I didn't want to have Governor Pritzker's guys scoot me up and kick the shit out of me in some alleyway and drop me in Lake Michigan. But the Governor Pritzker is talking about this, they balance their budget and then it's fiscal responsibility. I don't see how it's fiscal responsibility to keep going back to one industry and picking their pockets, because Illinois doesn't, they don't tax. They have a history of not properly taxing, not balancing their budgets, of running into deficits, of overcommitting. And then so their idea of being responsible is to pass these tax increases in the middle of the night. And again, all this is going to do, if FanDuel and DraftKings right now don't have people sitting in front of the FTC saying like, we'll take bets for food, just give us a certification to become a DFC, then they're being irresponsible to their shareholders. I can't think of a worse time to be sending this message to the licensed operators that, stay tuned for next year, because this probably isn't going to be the last one. And almost definitely you're going to see other states look at this, take note, and then you're going to see other states try and pass this through their legislature. But again, I just see this as potentially having the unintended consequence of pushing licensed operators, actually out of the marketplace and into these alternate channels of sweeps or, the prediction markets. Or our good old friends there in the offshore world must have been cheering, because this will eventually have an effect on players. Just the simple fact that, with those fixed fees, the likelihood of minimum bet sizes going up is, that's going to happen, because who's going to pay 40% GGR and then a fixed 25 to 50 cent GGR on a $1 parlay ticket? It's not going to happen. So I imagine also the responsible gaming guys should probably be pretty upset about this as well, because you're going to see, to engage in this marketplace, people are going to have to up their spend, their out-of-pocket spend, in order to play those games. This is one of those things where I was just like, who the heck dreamt this up? And they certainly didn't do due diligence. And they did it because they just had a quick idea and they passed it in the middle of the night so that nobody had a chance to get a word in edgewise about how unwise this truly is. So I hope it works out for Illinois. My guess is it probably won't over the long term.
A lot to unpack there. And as a starting point, Adam, let's note that unlike most other taxes, as Joe touched on, which are typically a percentage of handle and or gaming revenue, Illinois is proposing a flat fee per bet. And since not all bets are created equal and not all sportsbooks maintain the same margins, notably Circa, which operates in Illinois, what do you think of the flat fee model compared to the more standard percentage-based model?
I mean, it's just fucking insanity. Well, I mean, as Joe just sort of said, who dreamt this thing up? Like, it's just madness to sort of come. I mean, I saw Jeff post something yesterday, Jeff Benson from Circa. It's unsustainable for them. At least on the last tax hikes and that, they sort of, it was a bracketed thing that the low end still paid their 15% or 20 or whatever it was. And then the high end, as you earn more money, you get taxed further up the chain and things like that. Didn't like it, but couldn't say that, at least it wasn't well thought out. This thing just wasn't well thought out. As, the one area where the regulated market has kicked the unregulator's ass is on the small bets. The $10 bets, the $20 bets, the $50 bets, everything under $100. Generally, that whole ecosystem has moved onshore in one way or another. Now you're looking at guys, as Joe said, dollar bets costing you 25% on the volume. Yes, it's the first 20 million bets or something like that. Just write out the check. Right. Write out the check right now. 20 million bets times 25 cents and send it in and close your eyes and then go to work on it. Because what are you going to do? Raise the minimum bets when ultimately your one's betting a toothpick to win a lumberyard? Are the ones where you got bigger margins on the top? Does that mean you got to, increase your minimum bets on the straight wagers, which is, funny enough, ironically, what professional bettors and that have been chasing for a long time with the, minimum bet limits raised, and it's just utter madness. And this is where I think me and Joe paired up is a good fact. Mine is just raw, makes me sick, whatnot. And Joe's sort of the politician that can speak this clearly in words that, are delivered in a much better way to whomever may be able to listen. But the fact that DraftKings and FanDuel could not stop this, or the Sports Betting Alliance, and it just shows that they're just living in their own little world and they're not really willing to have conversations or understand what this business is, what they're trying to do, and the growth. And now the prediction markets are sweepstakes. And yes, Joe, I'm sure the offshores are dancing in the streets. They dance in the streets every time a legislator open their mouth these days. Because when they thought in 2018 that they had 3 to 5 years, now they're thinking they got 10 to 15 years of being able to eke out profit, keep people employed, and move this thing forward. Because I've always said the regulators, I have learned it's the legislators, are fucking this up over and over and over and over again. Yes, it's only a few states right now that are very egregious and out on their own. Hopefully many of the others don't follow, but it's just making it almost impossible for a Prime Sports, a BetCris Arizona, a Circa, being able to offer product in a regulated licensed market like this with the cost of doing business and just how difficult it is.
But one last point to make on this is, again, you come back to this, and this is, at least in part, the Fan Kings guys, the Sports Betting Alliance guys, they bear some of the responsibility for this. And in that they were the ones who, they were so desperate to get into New York State when it was going to open up that they agreed to that 51% GGR rate. That is the mother of all this trouble here right now. So as soon as they did that, they thought they were being very clever because they were going to just raise the bar incredibly high. So very few companies would be able to make it into that market. The commercials just didn't make any sense. So they got their way. And now every other state, I just don't understand that as a strategy. What did they think other states were going to do? Did they think Illinois, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Arkansas? I don't care. Name a state that's going to sit there and say, well, we couldn't possibly tax it. I mean, we're not New York, right? They don't think that they're second-class citizens to New York State. And the other thing is I don't know, maybe we should have stuck with the lobbying game after New Jersey and Pennsylvania, because from there on out, after Fan Kings and that ilk, they took over the lobbying. All they ever did was talk about the taxes, the money part, the handle. There's a reason why these lawmakers don't understand the commercials about sports betting. Those guys never took the time to properly educate them about it. All they wanted was a lightning strike. They wanted markets to open up quick so it could help juice their stock on Wall Street in the public markets, so that they would be able to blot out competition. And as a result, of course, lawmakers are looking at the industry like it's a cash register, because that's the only thing it was sold on. Jeff Benson was absolutely right. Congratulations, Jeff. You're an excellent political scientist. And the way this thing was sold. In New Jersey, we didn't talk about tax revenue until the third or fourth instance. It was all about, other things. It's consumer protection, helping out the local casino industry be able to compete in a digital world, creating jobs, things like that. The tax revenue, like I said, it was a lesser priority. But all these guys did in order to get legislatures to wet their pants and pass legislation as quickly as they could, open up America as quickly as they could, was talk about the handle. Okay, we know what handle means. How much do you think your average lawmaker understands the difference between handle and hold? They don't. So if you've got somebody telling you oh, your state's going to do $2 billion in bets this year. Well, I mean, these guys, this isn't the only issue that they work on, right? They rolled off of this one and then they started increasing tax on cigarettes and booze and everything. So they're not instant experts on all these industries and the finite details of what the commercial funnel is and what the revenues and what a rational tax rate is. And it's because those sons of bitches never took the time. They thought they were being clever, and by trying to have the whole world to themselves, they're a bunch of greedy ass pigs, and now they're suffering for it. So there's part of me that's how can I blame a bunch of sharp-elbowed Illinois politicians for doing this in the middle of the night, since that's the Chicago and the Illinois way of doing things? If they really didn't think that this couldn't happen there, then every lobbyist that those guys employ ought to be lined up and just freaking shot, because they got totally played. They got totally played, and it's not going to be the last time. So, I mean, what's the over-under on the number of legislatures that consider similar measures here within the next year? I'm going to give you 5. Book it now, Adam. It's going to be 5.
Pulling no punches. And before we move on from this topic, I know you guys have both alluded to this a bit, but since the notion of regulating the unregulated has been a recurring theme on this show, at this point in the evolution of the U.S. market, how much hope do you still have that a meaningful amount of offshore action will actually come back onshore?
Well, it depends on what you regard as onshore, because it's going onshore, but it's not regulated. So we've still got our unregulated onshore as much as the unregulated offshore. I mean, there's no way anybody would have seen this coming. The way this is playing out, the madness of it all, yes, all the legislators and that was sold a bad dream of what sports betting revenue was going to be. They were selling the iGaming dream of what the iGaming revenue can possibly be, which, we've still only got 7 states. I think a lot of them have woken up and realized just how damaging this is going to be once it gets rolled out full force. So they're just sort of picking on the scab that they can, and just it's going to keep bleeding and bleeding until DraftKings and FanDuel, as Joe said, will just go into predictions. They'll go and do what they need to do because this is unsustainable in the current market space that they're building out there right now.
Yeah, somebody said, I was having a conversation with somebody yesterday, and he said, like, well, why is this all happening so quickly? It just seems like, you look at prediction markets, you look at sweeps, you look at all this stuff. Like, why isn't there a bigger, louder opposition, right? Like right now, just look at the prediction market thing. The battle's being carried by New Jersey and Nevada in the courts. A couple other states are writing nasty letters. You guys stop that. We're going to send you another letter that says stop, right? And I've been there before. I mean, the whole world, was hopeful that New Jersey was going to be successful in iGaming and sports betting, but we didn't get any help from any of them. Once we got into the Supreme Court took the matter up. God, the bandwagon filled up virtually overnight. But we didn't have any help. Everybody's looking to offload the responsibility onto somebody else because they're all waiting to see. All right? Like every one of those companies right now probably has a prediction markets strategy in the box. They've got a sweep model in the box. They've got a, pick your poison. So none of them are going to go out there and potentially burn down or oppose what their future might be right now. So it will largely be left to states like Nevada and New Jersey because for them it's existential. It's more than just a digital business. But it is absolutely crazy right now that I never would have imagined that we would go from unregulated, all that, to licensed, regulated, to now it's the freaking Wild West. I mean, it's making my head spin. And I think I said it to one person who I met this past weekend. They're like, oh, wow, I heard you were the guy who legalized sports betting. It took 10 years. I was like, yeah, doesn't it all seem really quaint now? I feel practically Amish, in my old fashionedness of like, yeah, let's do everything by the book, by laws, by regulations, while the whole world just speeds right by us. It's unbelievable.
And let's use that as a transition from one hot topic to another. An ESPN article published yesterday by David Purdom and a colleague extensively explores the state of prediction markets, which dovetails with our episode last week. And Joe, in the ESPN piece, Kalshi claims it's not the house and therefore doesn't win by people losing. How do you view this distinction compared to some of the predatory VIP programs at several regulated sportsbooks that do act as the house?
First of all, I think Kalshi's distinction is a distinction without a difference. Kalshi has a sports business because people lose money betting on sports. Do they lose it to Kalshi or do they lose it to Susquehanna? It's kind of immaterial, isn't it? They have a business, they have a sports business because people lose money betting sports. So let's disabuse everybody of that particular notion. They don't have, again, a lot of this, what you see with the taxes, these huge increases year over year, is in part, as I said last week, there's a certain percentage of America that still views betting as a dirty business. And Kalshi must, on some level, feel self-conscious about it because they're trying to say that we're not a dirty business, right? So whatever. But as far as the rest of it, the VIP programs, the VIP programs probably need reforming. It's a byproduct of this blitzkrieg approach by the big brands in order to be able to gain market share and shut other people out. It's not like Fan Kings invented VIP programs. All the brick and mortar companies, they have VIP, they've had it forever. People know about grooming their whales. I think it's been defined down an awful lot. Like it would be a joke when I would talk to people who would be coming to Prime. They're like, oh, I'm a VIP at FanDuel. I'm at super double diamond level. They all got dumb names. It's like, okay, well, how much are you betting a month? Like, oh, I'm betting $4,000 a month. And okay, great. We'd be happy to have somebody who was betting $4,000 a month. But calling a $4,000 a month bettor a VIP, I mean, we have bets that are single bets that are significantly larger than that. So this abuse of VIP programs, the abuse of the incentives and all of that, that's something that really does need reform. How it relates to Kalshi, I mean, I don't think there's any really merge point there right now, other than I guess we're expecting that people who typically bet on the stock market are more like the client who's going to bet on a prediction market. And just imagine the amount of money. I mean, what do you got to pay Jeff Yass? What kind of perks do you got to give Jeff Yass, the CEO of Susquehanna, in order to keep his VIP action on your prediction market? That would be a hell of a perk.
Adam, the article also quotes an NFL representative in a letter to the CFTC saying of prediction markets, these contracts would mimic sports betting, but seemingly without the robust regulatory features that accompany regulated and legalized sports betting, and which help to mitigate threats to the integrity of our contests. This echoes a press release from Genius Sports yesterday calling for increased focus on integrity for sports contracts. So with all that in mind, what, if any, concerns do you see for integrity in prediction markets, and how does this compare to any potential concerns around integrity in sports betting?
Zero. Like, Genius is just playing because they've got the NFL official data, so they got the partnership, so they're crying from their corner. The NFL, the same thing, they're not getting paid by Kalshi and that for the data right now, so they're crying from their corner. Everybody's playing their own agenda right here. To take a couple of things from the article, the purchase of the contract is indistinguishable from the act of placing a sports wager, was Maryland Lottery and Gaming Commission when they sent their season to list. No shit, Sherlock. Tarek Mansour saying, Kalshi CEO, what's this got to do with gambling? If we're basically gambling, then I think basically in calling the entire financial market gambling. No shit, fucker. I mean, Jesus Christ, that is what the whole thing is. Like, they're all playing from their own corner based on what their agenda is and what they're playing for. And going back to the original one that you brought up, as far as the product is concerned, we are not the house. Sarah Slane, head of corporate development. I don't know who she is.
Ouch. Fellow Hall of Fame member.
Okay. Been around a while. Okay. So, yes, they're not the house. And this is the one side of it that you can potentially say people aren't losing on Kalshi, as in the public, the individuals. I think there's as much of the market makers and that behind the scenes that are losing possibly more than what they are on the front of the house. But ultimately, it's gambling. It's short-term contracts that are decided in hours, not months or years or whatever it is normally investment-wise of that nature. This is gambling, no matter what it is. Walking across the street, for me, doing this for 30, 40 years, is gambling if you don't decide, go across blindfolded or don't look left, right, and left again. It's all gambling. You can call it what you want. But everyone in this space right now is playing it from their angle. All the press releases are based on what dollar are you gambling on? Genius, gambling on the NFL and their official data. NFL, gambling on their data and their product, and they're not getting money out of it. Kalshi, gambling on their product because ultimately they need consumers on one side, market makers on the other side, feeding as much volume through because, they're not the house, but liquidity is what pays their expenses at the end of the day. So the more liquidity they get through, the more liquidity that they match. They're taking their 0.5% or 1% or whatever of every single trade. They set up where they only take it from the loser, like a Betfair did, back in the day or still does, where, the winner. The winner pays the tax, the loser doesn't. I haven't looked into Kalshi. I don't have a social security number. I can't sign up. I can't get in. So, it's all the same shit. They're just saying over and over, this is gambling. The regulators are saying we want our money. Legislators saying the same thing. Sports and leagues and data official owners are wanting their same thing. It's just fucking madness. I don't know what else to say. I mean, we've been here week after week. I'm all for support of this. States, give up. Go away. Let the Fed take over if we want to do it this way. Or pull your head out of your ass, understand what the lay of the land is, and be aggressive and compete. This is just a competition. It's now the state versus the Fed. And I mean, all us non-Americans find the US just one of the most comical existences on the planet of what goes on in this little world
Oh my God. Now we're gonna get mean about it. Like, oh, Americans are so fucking stupid.
I hear same shit going on back in Australia of these different things. It's just becoming a competition between one seller of goods and another seller of goods, and who's going to get their tax or who's going to get their fees and who's going to, like, there's a way to do this where if everybody could work out the best way to do it, where everyone eats, the competition is the unregulated, untaxed stuff. That's ultimately what they should be all teaming up against. And how do they make that legitimate where the consumers are protected, which they're not currently with sweeps and everything else? We've seen that clearly over the last 6 months. And how do you bring it in where, again, do you split the pie? Straight bets go to prediction markets. Now we're hearing Kalshi talking about they're going to bring parlays to that, which eats into more of the state revenue. States go and build their products and they scoop up the sweeps and close those loopholes or whatever else. But everyone's fighting over their little fucking grain of sand on the Sahara Desert. Like, there's plenty of it. Put it together. Work out how to do the ands, not ors, and it can work out. But I've never seen states or federal or any of these, the way they're structured, leagues, operators, just get in a room and nut it out. It's madness and it's tiring. And seeing these headlines every day is like, why the fuck are we doing this? Why not just pull up stumps and go back and have everything digital, everything crypto, everything untraceable, whatnot, and just do it like it was done last 30, 40 years.
Some people might argue that this is quintessentially American because it's everybody is competing to an extent. I mean, just broadly speaking, that's like, it's a huge competition. You know, you've got prediction markets competing against the state license markets, competing against the sweeps and the DFS plus guys, and competing against the offshore guys and the street guys, all one big competition. It's not an equal competition in any way because we're talking about like one company when it comes to the prediction markets. We're not talking about a slew of companies because there's just only so many Trump children that you can hire to be on your advisory board in order to be able to shut the door, right? But the thing that you just can't get over with all this stuff is it's just happening so quickly. Like, it's making my head spin how quickly this thing happens. What are our odds that we're going to be talking, like, Kalshi is one of our 3 topics every week for like the next 6 months? We were just talking before the show about like the 100th episode. What are the chances that, and we said, like November something that would be coming out. So what are the chances, anybody want to book this one, that our lead item is about Kalshi, right? And they've launched not only their parlays, but they're doing sides and others to more quickly mirror the existing product, you know, that the states have.
Well, I hope that we're talking about a state coming out saying we're going to stand at our 10, 15%. You know, we're going to push this forward. We understand how it all works. I know this is a long shot that anyone will come out and do this. And in fact, we're in Arizona now and they got their 10% GGR, and like, just hold it, hang in there, like keep fighting and go after some other stuff. Because, you know, I've said we'll never go to Pennsylvania based on how we're structured now. New York's off the cards. You know, Illinois is definitely not there now. Ohio keeps bringing up random things each and other week of doubling the tax or volume tax or all these kind of things. So we're like, you know, every morning waking up to sort of see if they pull some Illinois thing. It's really hard and tiring to work out what the roadmap is, because the easiest roadmap, because we have all the technology, we have all the models, we have all the numbers. We could plug into a Sport Trade, a Kalshi, or any of those things tomorrow. Do an integration, 4 to 6 weeks. We should be able to become market makers.
Sounds like a sales pitch.
I mean, I have an offshore background. I know the industry very well. Every time I've sat with a regulator, and I know Joe's heart was in his mouth when we sat with Ohio one time, is really trying to regulate the unregulated. We're trying to do it the right way. We're trying to do it the way that was proposed and premised, and doing it the way that it can be done with good, fair, taxable, cost of business ways. But they're making it really, really hard right now to sort of stay the path of it is the right way, it's the way to do it, when it's the Wild West.
You want to have a stomach dropping moment. Be on a call with an entire state's regulatory staff with Adam waxing poetic about the way things should be, and only to have the head investigator say, gee, Adam, that's very interesting. Tell me more. But I mean, I want to make one last point on this, and it's this, and this is going to be total and utter blasphemy when it comes to gaming in the United States. You look at the other sin industries, tobacco, booze, weed, things like that. The taxes are levied on whom? The consumer, right? You go buy a pack of cigarettes, you go buy a 6-pack of beer, a bottle of booze. I mean, it is unreal. In gaming, that's not the way it is. The burden of the taxes are levied directly on the operator, right? We're not taxing people's winnings when they come out. They're not being taxed on a winning wager. So a lot of that, again, has to do with the nature of the business. I guess that the house, quote, always wins. So they expect us to be that. So you can foresee somebody eventually, some state, federal government, whomever, eventually says like, well, we've kind of hit our diminishing return now on levying direct taxes on the operator. Maybe what we need to do is levy direct taxes onto the consumer, onto the player. And that will just really, I mean, at that point, it makes you think like if somebody suggests doing that, like if next year when Illinois can't find an extra $1 billion to fund whatever it is that Illinois needs to fund. And I cannot wait to see the Illinois people when I'm at the conference, the annual conference for gaming state legislators in Louisville in July. I'll bet they're going to love me. But what happens close to midnight on budget day in Illinois when somebody says like, well, why don't we tax winning? Why don't we put a 10% tax on the winnings of players on their wager? And we make the sports books take it out or something like that. I mean, at that point, you're like, why are we, this whole system needs to be thrown out. And then, okay, well then why don't we just let it all in? Offshore, onshore, sweeps, DFS plus, sportsbook, prediction marks, and just make sure that we tax every winning wager as X, right? Then it's a consumption tax. And I could totally see, and I know I'm not giving anybody a new idea because I've heard this before. I've heard it discussed about taxing players. And it's always just been the way the gaming industry has done business. We don't tax the winners. We don't tax them directly. But you can see a world where, because this is what happens, government, they get a taste of blood in their mouth, and they're just going to go for it. And they see the money that gaming operators are throwing off. And, to their defense, states have very few ways of raising taxes in their states to meet their obligations. States have to balance their budget. They have to find a way, just increasing property taxes, state sales taxes, state income taxes, all those that. There's a lot of pain out there. Why? Because Americans say they want government off their back, but then, boy, they want a lot of government. They want to consume a lot of government, and who the hell is going to pay for it, right? Well, now it's let's let degenerate sports bettors pay for it. That's what's in the mind of people. That's what's in the mind of legislators. And they're going to hammer us because we're running a dirty business in their minds. So it's okay to make us pay these absolutely usurious tax rates. But eventually, it's still not going to be enough. It's still not going to be enough. And somebody's going to just turn it around and say like, well, let's start taxing bettors instead, right?
Well, what happens is there is a lot of countries that do that. So let's give the US a taste of that. Then let's hear the uproar.
Yeah. And then everybody who's like, wow, Kalshi, this is great. They're not even paying, they don't even have to pay the taxes on it yet. If Kalshi lasts more than a year, how long is it going to take some creative guy up on Capitol Hill because, they couldn't find enough money in the big, beautiful bill to be able to pay the way for the federal government? And they start saying like, well, let's levy a federal tax on sports betting. They've already got the excise tax, which is a turnover tax of 0.25% on every bet we take. Absolutely, we'll see that go up. And in the end, the only people who will be able to offer this legally will be like the state lottery corporations. because they're a state entity. They don't have to operate at a profit, and it'll be a totally shit product. All apologies to everybody who's in the state lottery business, but it'll be a state-run, government-run monopoly. It'll be a crap product. And then, what Adam was saying earlier about those poor, despondent offshore guys who right now should have already packed their bags and headed off into retirement, they're going to be able to hand down incredibly profitable businesses to their children and their grandchildren, which are going to run for like another 30, 50 years, because we just can't have any discipline around, or any rational thinking around, what's the proper way to tax this industry so it benefits everybody.
We'll go ahead and close out with a quick jump ball in the spirit of the NBA Finals getting underway this week. Peter Jackson, the CEO of FanDuel parent company Flutter, said on a recent earnings call that FanDuel is interested in the potential opportunity to launch its own prediction market. So guys, following up on our conversation last week and earlier parts of this conversation about the existential threat prediction markets could pose to regulated operators, and especially in light of the news out of Illinois, what's your over-under on when the first currently regulated U.S. sportsbook starts taking bets through its own prediction market?
I don't know what it takes to get licensed and whatnot, but they could probably go and acquire something that's already licensed. Closing on that doesn't take so long. I'm already Googling right now if there's any looking for business, so it could be sooner than later. I mean, I imagine if it keeps going as is, we're only in June. Before the end of the year, someone has to take a stand and just jump into it.
Well, you already had the redheaded stepchild of the industry, Alex Kane, with his open letter from Sport Trade to the CFTC declaring their willingness to have an open marriage between themselves and, state regulators and federal regulators. I don't know if that actually gets them the license, but I'll tell you, this is where, Fan Kings and those guys might really regret the whole, hey, let's cynically use the law and the regulations to create a competitive advantage and shut the door behind us. Because right now, Tarek Mansour, flag-waving libertarian defender of truth, justice, and the American way, Tarek Mansour seems to have really kind of outmaneuvered all of them, because he's got so many connections now in the administration. What's the motivation right now for the CFTC, the administration, anybody to give a license, regardless of whether you buy out some down on their luck DCM or not, to Fan Kings or anybody else, or Sport Trade or anybody else, to break up what is becoming a quick monopoly? Already, they've got Robinhood on the hook to suddenly Tarek's company, which was I'm just going to say it, you look at the numbers, it was a nothing company before they did this. That you look at the numbers on their trading, they weren't doing shit. So they add sports, now boom, they look like geniuses, like the freaking Thomas Edisons of sports betting. Sorry, prediction markets. You want to see government being used cynically to hold down competition? Just wait and see that. They certainly seem like they've got the deck stacked.
Well, as you guys alluded to, probably plenty more to come on this topic in the weeks and months to come. We'll go ahead and wrap up now for this week's conversation. To the audience, whatever your rooting interest in the NHL and NBA Finals and the rapidly evolving landscapes of tax rates and prediction markets, thanks as always for tuning in, and we'll catch you next week. Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Prime Suspects. Register for Prime Sports at primesports.com and download the Prime Sports app. You can follow us on Twitter at PrimeSuspects_, at Joe Brennan Jr., and at Adam Bjorn 2. You must be 21 or over to play on Prime Sports. Always bet responsibly and within your limits. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER.